First class offender, parole eligibility date 10/12/2003. Good time date 12/6/2029. Full term date 6/14/2075. We have for armed robbery and 99 years. Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. How old are you, Mr. Francis?
62,
How long have you been incarcerated?
44 and a half years.
How old were you when you committed this crime?
17.
And when you committed this crime, what was going on with you? Were you on drinking drugs? Was this what was going on back then?
I was just young and wild and naive and didn't understand what life was really about and didn't have no value for life or even for no one else's life at that time. I was just young and foolish, sir.
What have you been doing? What have you been doing with your time? A lot of time down. What have you been doing with your time?
Well, I've been preparing myself to be a better person after 7 years of being incarcerated. I had a real rough time when I first came, and then I settled down, became involved with self-help programs to change myself, to make myself a better person. I participated in hospice, been a hospice volunteer since the inception of hospice. I took every course that I was able to take that was afforded to me, 100 hours, thanking for a change, victim awareness, everything that I could possibly do to grow and develop.
You got your GED.
Yes, sir.
What's your current status there at the jail? You're a Class A trustee. You're a trustee. What are you?
I'm a Class A trustee
How long have you been a Class A trustee?
since 1990.
What is your job duty around there?
My job duty is I work at death row. I'm a death row orderly and mentor to prisoners over there.
When's the last time you had any disciplinary?
I think it was in 2012, sir.
What if you were to be released today? What's your plans? Where would you go? What would you do?
Well, I plan to go to the parole project for my reentry program. And with that being said, prepare myself at the reentry to reenter into society as best I can and to be able to give back by providing information to youths as well as work with elderly people. That's been my task here since I've been here, working with people, trying to help and be a better person to give back to society something that I took.
Where are you going to live? Where after you're going to stay with the parole project? And we'll talk to them in a minute. But you're going to go to the parole project and stay there for as long as you need to, and then find you some residence plan.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any type of physical issues, mental health issues? Are you taking any meds for anything?
The only thing I take is a cholesterol medication, and I have a large prostate. That's about it, sir.
Okay, no mental health, anything, taking no meds for depression, anxiety, anything like that?
No, sir.
Warden, you have any input there?
Just what you stated already, he's been here 44 years, and I'm looking at his record. I've been knowing Jerry for quite a few years, and never had no real trouble out of him, no real problems. He's actually worked up in the building with us for a while, administration building. Been a trustee for, like he says, it's on and off since the 1990, and has been for the last. He lost it the last time back in I think '08, And then he got it back and hadn't lost and hadn't had a write-up since that write-up that he lost it for in 2012. So he's pretty much been a model offender since he's been here.
All right, thank you. All right, that's all the questions I have. Answer Mr. Alvin Roche's questions, please.
Sir,
Good morning, Mr. Francis. How are you?
I'm blessed, sir, and yourself.
I'm good. Mr. Francis, you stated that you were 62 years old
Yes, sir.
and that you had a real rough time when you first got to Louisiana State Penitentiary.
Yes, sir.
By my count, there's 133 disciplinary write-ups.
Yes, sir.
The last one being when you were 56 years old,
Yes, sir.
and that would be in 2012,
Yes, sir.
8 years ago. So actually you'd be 54. What event or what class during your incarceration made you to have a 180-degree turnaround?
Well, it was because I began to take a deep look at myself, and I didn't like who I was. I didn't like that. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be not remembered for the bad things that I did. I wanted to be remembered for the good things that I had started in my mind to be. And that's what I started striving to be. And I never looked back from that point on. I wanted to be a better person.
Well, I think you'll always be remembered, Mr. Francis. I don't think anything that you could ever do would put you out the minds of the victims.
And I,
So tell me, a 17-year-old who wanted to rob a series of banks, you had all the options in the world. Why did you choose to shoot someone and eventually cause their death?
sir, that question I've been asking myself ever since I wanted to make amends for and I cannot come up with an answer that can even begin to describe why. I can't answer it because it was senseless. What I did didn't make no sense at all. And I'm strongly against what I did. And I understand that I needed to be punished. I needed to be here at the route that I was going. I needed that. It was no coincidence of me being there because what I did it can't be explained, sir. I just can't even imagine why I did what I did.
At the time you committed these bank robberies and you were never prosecuted for the 2 murders, were you under the influence of drugs or alcohol?
No, sir. I wasn't under no influence of drugs or alcohol. That was not an excuse.
Now, I read your case 2 or 3 times. I've read the elegant brief by Miss Sullivan, one of the best written briefs I've seen in the last 5 years. You should be commended, Miss Sullivan. Now, I've read it, and I just see that you've been in court throughout the years to get a resentencing, reducing sentence throughout the sentence. And the last time was in 2016. And you got one of your armed robbery sentences reduced from 99 years to 50 years. Tell me about your motions to the court.
Yes, sir. Well, my motion to the court came in because of new interpretations of the law with Graham versus Florida, where a juvenile was not to be made to have what may be considered a life sentence without a meaningful opportunity for release. And I took advantage of that motion to file to be reconsidered.
And you were successful, am I right?
I was successful in Acadia Parish, but not so in St. Mary.
So by virtue of your reduced sentence, and I think you were sentenced to 50 years, it gave you a reasonable expectation for early release because you got a good time date. Is that correct?
No, sir, not really, sir, because I still have 99 years.
But you do have a good time date in 2029, am I correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So basically you have a reasonable expectation to have early release. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have an expectation of a release. Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Now, Warden,
Yes,
tell me exactly what that 30W was for in 2012.
2012.
that was, I just looked at it. He was actually, that was when he was working up at the building with us, and the captain, that's the count officer at the time, that's one of Frugier, was going around looking for the counts and couldn't find him, and he had left to go to a treatment center for a call out, and she said he hadn't notified nobody about him leaving, he just left.
Thank you, sir. Which I would consider a minor infraction. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Renata.
Yeah, Mr. Francis. When you were telling Mr. Kelsey about your program completions and those that you participated in, did you have the opportunity to take a victim awareness class?
Yes, ma'am. I took a victim wellness. Yes, ma'am.
What did you learn from that class?
Well, I learned that in order for healing, that I have to take full responsibility for my actions. I learned that I actually hurt a lot of people, the victim family, society, my family. And I learned that I have to be able to feel and understand whether the victims are able to forgive me or not forgive me. I have to be able to understand that. And I have to be able to feel, try to feel what they feel for what happened.
And so did you come to that understanding?
Yes, ma'am. I did.
And so in terms of giving back to your community, what type of community service work do you do at Angola?
A variety. I work with the hospice. I work with the Park Lookout Committee. Any type of civic service that I could give, I'm available for. I was awarded service for helping in the COVID-19 when the people get sick at Camp F. I was awarded a certificate for that.
Good. Well. So I want you to tell the parole panel why you think we should grant you early release.
Well, I believe that it says that the institution is supposed to be a place that corrects us. And I believe that I have took full advantage of everything that the institution have had to offer to show that I have rehabilitated and that I can be a productive citizen in society. And that is why I am asking the board to really consider giving me the opportunity to show and demonstrate that I am that changed person today.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, may I ask one more question, please?
Sure.
Mr. Francis, I see your primary residency plan is in New Iberia, Louisiana.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an alternate plan outside of Southwest Louisiana?
Yes, sir. I can say that I have another plan for with New Orleans, in New Orleans, Louisiana, with the first 72. That's a reentry project as well.
Right. Okay, because it is my understanding that all the victims' family is in Southwest Louisiana, and I would not want to put them or you in that situation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, now we'll hear from Mr. Norris Henderson. Would you like to make a statement?
Good morning, board members. My name is Norris Henderson, and I am one of the founding members of the First 72 Plus. And since the last question Mr. Roche asked about Mr. Francis about the residential plans, we have prepared a plan for Mr. Francis in the event that he's granted parole after he would leave Andrew and them at the parole project to come to New Orleans so we can help him get started. I am a personal friend and has been a friend of Jerry for almost 50 years now. And I listened intently when the question were being asked about, especially the question about what influenced him to, I think, go right, kind of like make this 360-degree turnaround. And I would venture to say that when Jerry showed up there, being young and kind of like in a different environment, trying to acclimate himself, he started looking in front of him, what guys in front of him were doing. And I just happened to be blessed to be one of those guys that he kind of like looked up to try to follow in the direction. Jerry has done a lot of things, a lot of tremendous things in prison. I think if you look at his record, most of it is attested to service to others. And one of the things about parole is not about group change, it's about individual change. And I think Jerry has done everything to kind of like bring himself into the realm that somebody would say this person is deserving of a second chance. Jerry was very young when this happened. And although that don't, excuse what happened, I didn't know Jerry at the time when it happened, but I know him now. We actually created the hospice program together when I was there. We were trustees together. We worked on the Point Lookout Committee together. And although Jerry did not have a legal life sentence, Jerry was also a member of the lifers because we considered anybody who had more than 50 years a practical lifer. And so Jerry has been a part of the Angola community and doing everything, given the fact that it was a community, being civically engaged inside of that community. His faith has played a major part in Jerry being who he is. His attribute is Wali, which means friend, and he's always been a servant. He's been a part of the JCs, the Anglo Special Civics Project, that help educate other guys inside the prison about and recognizing and reconciling with their legal situation that they found themselves in. We created a service crew that served every event that the institution hosted. We were the caterers for that whatever that event was. Jerry was a part of that, the founding part of that, and actually took him and James McGee took over that project after myself and Chico left. So Waleed has been really, really, I'm not saying this lightly, that I'm very proud of him. And I say I'm proud of him because you have to know him to actually say you're proud of him, because I knew him when he was rough and tumble, but now I see him as a grown man and, the wrinkles is out of his shirt, I guess in a similar way. But again, I am also the founder and executive director of two nonprofits in New Orleans, Voice Experience and Voice Organized to Educate. I have a staff of 25 people. We have 3 other chapters, one in Baton Rouge, one in Lafayette, one in Shreveport. And I can assure that Jerry would have employment also if he released from the Parole Project and came to New Orleans. So I can assure that 2 things. 1, he would have housing. 2, that he would have employment. And he would have the wraparound services, that peer support that he would need to actually strengthen him. We also have, I would say, a self-help group that we have called How We Help Each Other, those who have been incarcerated and what we do. I've been out of prison. This is my 18th year. And, our mantra is that something good can come out of Angola. And we've been a testament to that and helping everybody who we show up in front of this board on behalf of. We don't show up for anybody. We show up for people that we believe will be successful and that would give us an opportunity to help them help themselves. So I would deeply implore the board to really consider Jerry for release. Again, he was a kid when he entered the prison, and not just saying that the Supreme Court said that kids should be treated differently, but just looking at this kid who has turned into a grown man and who have acknowledged the fact that I was a rough and tumble person, but I've actually got my act together, and would ask this board to really consider Jerry for release through the Parole Project in BatonRouge, and once he releases the Parole Project, to come to the First 72 in New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'd now like to speak to Mr. Marks, make a brief comment.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to participate in this process. I am a first cousin of Jerry. My mother is his aunt. And when Jerry became incarcerated, I was merely 7 years old. And so back then, I didn't really know him that well, but I knew that something bad had taken place that got him there. And many years went by, and about 15 years ago, he and I reconnected through his strong relationship with my mother, especially after his mother passed away. And through talking with him, I spent many, many days talking with him and getting to know him. And the person who he is today is not the young 17-year-old who committed those offenses. He is one of the most compassionate people that I've gotten to know just through talking with him. I can feel the warmth through the phone when I talk with him. And as he started telling me about the projects, the programs that he's been involved in, it takes a very special person to have an interest in hospice care. I, as a physician, I don't think that person is me. And it takes a very unique individual. And so that says a lot about Jerry's character. I know that he's very remorseful for any harm that he's done to anyone when he was 17. He has a very strong faith. His family, we have a large family. He has a host of sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles who are all just eager to get to know him again. As he's been gone for so long, the world has changed, but our love for him has not changed. Our support has not changed. We have the ability to, I know he's planning, he has one thing, and whatever resources he needs, the resources are there within our family. Myself, I have ties. If New Orleans is the place that he wants to be, we own property there. If he needs a place to stay, we can assist in with that. As far as employment, I don't foresee him having any trouble, especially as Mr. Norris, with Mr. Norris's support. I am willing to do whatever I am able to provide to help him get back into society. And through our conversations, one of the things that he's communicated to me that he really wants to do is he wants to touch the life of at least one young man who perhaps may be headed down the same pathway that he went down. And if he can make an impact in just that one individual's life, he can spare other families from going through the agony that his family and the victim's family went through. And I have no doubt that, he will be successful in that effort.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, Mr. Huntley, would you like to make a brief statement, real brief?
Yes, sir. Andrew Hunley, Louisiana Parole Project. We just wanted to confirm to the board that Jerry is a client of ours, and if he were to be granted early release, he would come to our program and participate in our intensive reintegration program that's designed for people like him, especially those who went to prison as teenagers and have served long prison sentences. As this board's aware, we have a success record with people like Jerry, helping them reintegrate into the community successfully. As far as our organization's concerned, I want to verify to the board that Jerry would remain with us until we were confident that he is ready to move to the next step. And our organization will, has a good relationship with First 72. We do hand off, but whatever his reentry plan is, he will stay with us until we're confident he's ready to move to the next step. Our organization will also ensure that if he is released, that he is in compliance with all conditions that are granted by this board. And as this board's aware, we don't just do that while clients are in-house with us. We'll continue to do it with peer support and case management after he leaves our program. The last thing I want to leave this board is, I know there are a lot of considerations that you consider when releasing someone. I'd like to speak to reentry. In my experience, there is a sweet spot in reentry, and there is a point where I know this board can make the decision: do we release him now? Does he wait a little longer? At 62 years old and 40 plus years served, I submit to you, this is the sweet spot for him. Jerry is still employable, and he's at a point where he can earn a living to help support himself for the future, rather be released at a point in the future where he would be dependent on the state or on family. We feel really confident at this point we can help him become a tax-paying citizen that's giving back to the community. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, now we'll hear from Mr. Wilford and Miss Brenda.
Okay.
All right, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name's Wilfred Lewis Johnson, and I'm talking on behalf of my grandpa, who was shot and robbed in May by Jerry Francis and Preston Dumaschet. On that day, they came into rain. It was raining, and they wanted to rob the Rain State Bank. This is what was said at the trial. But they had too many people, and it was raining, so they decided to drive out of town, where my grandpa had a hardware store. He was working at the hardware store. They walked in. They made him get on all fours. They robbed him, and what was said at the trial was that they were leaving, and the driver, I think it was Dumache's, old Francis, said, "You forgot something." And he ran back in the store, which they had my grandpa on all fours, and shot him behind the head. So they wanting another chance at life. My grandpa never had that chance. And I don't see, they had gave him 99 years, no probation, no parole. And I don't know why it changed, but my grandpa never had another chance. He wants another chance, but my grandpa and other people never had a chance. But the sheriff at the time was Elton Arsenault. And at the trial, he told my father, he says, "We have to get him for armed robbery," because he said murder, he could probably be out in 7 years for murder. So they gave him for armed robbery 99 years, no probation, no parole. And the last few years he's been coming up for parole, and brings up all kind of memories, which we shouldn't even have to be worried about this. But he wants to be free now. But my grandpa is not free, and the other people that the effect is not free either. So I really appreciate it if y'all take into consideration the family's feelings too. It's not just what they want. They say he's done good in prison. I just heard he's doing good in prison, and if he's doing that good, I think they need to just keep him in there. Keep doing good in prison.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Miss Howington, y'all from a distance there. You have a victim there would like to maybe make a statement, then you make your statement, or the sheriff. What? Yeah, just
Our camera's a little bit fuzzy.
that's okay. Just let us know. Just state your name.
Yeah, Gene Schaff. My mother was shot by Jerry at the Parks Bank robbery on May 26, 1976. The situation was very similar to when they shot Mr. Johnson. Walked in, put her on the floor, and shot her in the back of the head. But my mother didn't die right away. She lived in a vegetative state for about a year. Had she woken up, we were told she would have been deaf and blind. So that's a horrible thing to watch. And Mr. Johnson, when they robbed him, the take in that robbery was $30. So they took the man's life for $30. In 2 months after that, in July of '76, Jerry also confessed to the murder of a Mr. Louis Glado, the Hasty Mart in New Iberia, the crime that was committed in March of that year. And ballistics showed that the same gun was used in all three crimes. Jerry never went to trial for that. 2 other men were convicted of that crime. They were later released 20 years later. But Jerry remained silent during that whole time while these 2 innocent men were there. And quite frankly, the only reason why we're here is because Jerry was 17 years old. And it's not like he was a junior high kid who got into a situation that got out of control, or something where he just didn't, predict the outcome. Each one of these crimes, they were going to go in and they were going to murder the person that was in there. It didn't matter who it was. That was the plan. And Jerry stayed in high school, he would have graduated 2 weeks before. If Jerry would have stayed out of prison, he would have voted in the presidential election that year. To say that he was an irresponsible juvenile, to me, is just absolutely ludicrous. Mr. Kelsey, Mr. Roche, I was at the last parole hearing, and Jerry has filed a motion that my testimony should not have been included in that hearing because at the time I was a minor when the crime was committed. I was 13 when my mother was shot, but yet even at the age of 13, I had the sense to know that to rob someone and shoot them in the back of the head is not something you should do. And Jerry continues to file these frivolous, petitions and suits. He filed one about me testifying at the last parole hearing. He's filed one that his sentence for the partial armed robbery should be reduced to just 5 years. He was fortunate enough to have the hardware store robbery sentence reduced from 99 years to 50 years, and instead of running consecutively, run concurrently. So what that effectively did was that gave him a free pass on that Rain robbery. You know, so he served less than half of the 99 years. You know, at the time, our families were promised, our family, the Johnson family, and 2 independent juries decided that Jerry Francis should not be out on the street ever again. 2 independent juries gave him 99 years without the possibility of parole or probation. And yet I think this is the 4th or 5th time I'm here arguing this. Every time this comes up, we got to bring up all these details. I got to bring up all the records I have, photographs of Jerry leaving the bank with the gun in his hand, photographs of Jerry on the opposite side of the counter where he shot my mother. You know, this is painful for us to do. You know, yes, he's doing well in prison now. Well, what 62-year-old doesn't mature by the time they're 62 years old? And if he is doing good in prison, you know, maybe that is the only place where he can make his peace with God and save his soul. And maybe that's where he should stay. You know, this is just going on long enough. And I know it's just going to keep going on and keep going on. He's going to keep filing these frivolous lawsuits, frivolous petitions. And I know we're going to be back here in another 3 or 4 years. But this is painful. This is very painful for us to go through this. I grew up without a mother. And the day my mother was shot, my father had a stroke because, you know, this was a stressful thing. So I was essentially orphaned at the age of 13 because of Jerry Francis. Did I turn to crime or anything? No. So he wasn't on drugs. He wasn't on alcohol. And even his own mother is the one that turned him in because she knew the only way that he would stop was either he was going to get killed committing a crime or if he went to prison. Now, how many mothers would do that to recognize that their son is such a bad apple that they need to turn him in? So if he's doing well in prison, if he's helping people in prison, he's making his peace with God, maybe that's where he should stay.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Next, Ms. Howington.
Yes, sir. I think Mr. Jean's comments are right on the money. And I also would like to add that in addition to his comments, one of the things that I think the board looks at is whether or not Mr. Francis has really accepted what he did and has shown remorse for it. And even though he says that he has taken these victim classes and understand what that means, I think that his actions recently just go to show that he hasn't really accepted responsibility because he keeps asking for things that he's not entitled to. Mr. Roche, I know that you pointed out that his last lawsuit was in 2016. That's actually not accurate. He filed one in 2016, and then he's taken that action to federal court. In 2018, he asked to be resentenced to 5 years for a simple robbery in federal court, and that was denied. And I quite frankly consider that insulting to Ms. Beverly's memory. And then that was denied in February 11th of this year, and he's actually seeking review of that in the United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So that's still pending. And as well, his 2014 parole hearing is the one that he complained that y'all inappropriately considered the testimony of the victims in that matter, which I think y'all are legally entitled to do. That was dismissed after his last parole hearing in 2018 as legally frivolous. So he had continued to pursue those. So I think that that goes to whether or not he really has accepted that this is his sentence and he needs to serve that and take that time to really work on himself. I would also note that there's significant community opposition to his release. We've obtained letters from several elected officials. Most recently, Jeff Landry's office sent y'all a letter opposing it. as well as the bank, saying that they are quite frankly concerned about what would happen if he's released into the community. I think, Mr. Rocha, you pointed out that his address that he wants to live in is in New Iberia. I would definitely oppose that request. I just think that having him be somewhere where he might run into the victims in this matter would be really inappropriate. And quite frankly, I think when you look at this case, one of the things that has happened, because I've been handling this for several years now, is when people find out that I'm assigned to this case, they go, oh, the Parks bank robbery, that was really bad. It's a memory in that community that has never left. People tell me that's when they started locking their doors. It really changed Parks for the long term. And I just think that Mr. Francis needs to serve out his time.
Thank you. All right, we're covered there. Good. No one else there, Ms. Ellington? Okay,
All of us.
all right, thank you. All right. All right. Mr. Francis, would you like to make a statement on your behalf? I assume, Ms. Sullivan, you're gonna finish up in the end unless you'd like to make a statement before.
Yes, sir. I'd like to say
No,
something.
wait, Mr. Francis, hang on. Hey, I'm sorry. Ms. Sullivan.
I was just saying, sir, I'll go after Mr. Francis.
Okay, great. All right, Mr. Francis.
Sir, you know, and I understand that the people that I hurt are still hurting, and I understand that. But if I live 1,000 years, I can't change that. The only thing I am able to do is change me, and I have changed me. And I just ask that the board take that into consideration, that I have grown, developing and matured.
Okay. All right, Ms. Sullivan.
Hello. So this is an incredibly tragic case. And as much as we all wish that we could take back the deaths of Mr. Johnson and Ms. Schoaf, we are not able to do that. We're not able to take away the pain that their families have expressed today. But despite the horrific acts that Jerry was involved in, he has rehabilitated himself during his time in prison. The United States Supreme Court has ruled in cases related to excessive sentences for juveniles that juveniles do have the capacity for change, and that they deserve an opportunity for release. And I'm currently a third-year law student. I've been working on Jerry's case since the fall of 2019. And one of the things that first stood out to me was the fact that Jerry's been in prison longer than I've been alive, and he has been an A-level trustee since I was 1 year old. And during that time, he's been trusted by the Angola staff to work in administrative buildings, as was previously mentioned. He's been trusted to help with work at employees' homes at the Beeline. He has also been allowed to work outside of Angola at an elementary school. And this indicates the strong trust that the administration at Angola has in him, and that he is able to work successfully outside of Angola, as we have entrusted him with responsibilities already in the communities where we live and where we work. And in addition to maintaining his status as an A-level trustee for 30 years, Mr. Francis, as he mentioned, was also one of the founding members of the Angola program at hospice. And this is something that he has remained strongly committed to. He has even tailored his work schedule so that he's able to be at hospice when patients are receiving their care, so that he can provide emotional and physical support for them. And working for a hospice organization is something that Mr. Francis is interested in doing, should he be granted parole, as he's now able to do under Louisiana law. And the discipline that he has shown, and the expectations that he has for himself, I think are just displayed through that longstanding commitment to hospice and his maintenance of his trustee level. As has been mentioned, he has the full support of the parole project in finding employment and in finding housing. If this board deems that he should be granted parole, they will be able to help make sure that he is able to live and work somewhere outside of Southwest Louisiana. And not only does he have the support of the parole project and First 72, he also has extensive family support. He right now on YouTube has 39 members of his family and friends watching who are here ready to support him, with transportation, with spiritual guidance, with anything that he needs. So that's 9 of his siblings. He has 6 aunts and uncles who are on this call, 20 nieces and nephews, and 4 friends. And many of these people are people who have expressed support when he has come up for parole in the past, which indicates that they're likely to have strong support for him if he is released. So he also had a risk assessment conducted in October, and it was deemed that he was low risk. As he mentioned, he has completed all of the programming that is applicable to him, and he has his GED. So for these reasons, we pray that you humbly grant him parole today. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we go into executive session.
You have a motion for executive session?
I'll second.
Second, roll call, please.
Mr. Roche,
Yes,
Mr. Kelsey,
Yes,
Ms. Renato.
Yes.
we'll be right back. All right, I think we're all back. Let's make sure everybody's here. Everybody pops up. All right. We're back. Is the panel prepared to vote?
yes,
Mr. Alvin Roche?
Mr. Francis.
Sure.
I've been reading and analyzing and taking a hard look at your case for the last 3 or 4 days. I've read the entire PPI and I've read the excellent brief by Ms. Sullivan. And I've heard the compelling testimony of the victim's family and the district attorney's office in the jurisdiction where you committed the crimes. I've come to the conclusion that based upon very adamant opposition from the victims' families, strong opposition from the entire legal community, in the proximity of your good time date, my vote is to deny your request.
Ms. Cheryl Knotson?
Mr. Francis, this is a very, very difficult case. I mean, this is not an easy job. I too have listened to everything that was said today. I've studied all the documents and all the testimony that we have in the record. My vote today would be to grant your parole. based on your demonstrated maturity and rehabilitation. I am a little concerned about your litigious nature in that you've tried to sue your way out of jail. But you have done some good work since you've been in prison. You perform excellent community service work. Warden LaMartiniere gave you positive remarks, so my vote today would be to grant your parole to the parole project in the first 72 plan.
All right, you have one vote to grant your parole, one vote to deny your parole. Again, there's no secret here. Every decision is difficult that we make. It is, things are a little different. You do have a good time date. And so, you as the family, the victims will have to understand that, you will be released. At some point you will be released. That's just how it is. Today for me, I'm going to have to vote to deny your parole. Same reasons as stated by Mr. Roche. So you have 2 votes to deny, 1 to grant. The parole's been denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's unpack this. It's interesting because when I first saw the case, and the notes that Richard provided, it said armed robbery, life sentences, and I'm thinking, okay, I can root for this guy. He's been there a long time. It's armed robbery. Then as the hearing slowly unravels and you begin to hear what he actually did, my blood begins to boil. And really what I came to in my determination and feeling of it was that this guy there's something wrong with him and he shouldn't ever get out. The idea that someone can go into a bank after they got, and we'll go through the details, it was, if you could see here the pictures from this, it's actually quite fascinating that they were able to get these pictures at this quality in the 70s. And it was because the bank teller was suspicious because they came into the bank 3 times that day. And my understanding is she clicked the button that took the picture. But what really, it's always remarkable when you hear the people talk in support. And there's something just, to me, it seems consistent so often, with very rare exception, where the people in support are so, it seems, delusional. And that always expresses itself when, as soon as they're done talking, then the victims speak. And you're like brought back to earth, and you're brought back to realize how, in this case in particular, he is suing so that the child of the child who essentially became orphaned can't testify. He's still doing that. He is suing so he can't testify. And what does his supporter say? Kevin Martin say he is a compassionate person. He is compassionate. How is that compassionate? He's still delivering insult to injury and pain by suing that this man can't testify in the hearing where it's unbelievable. And even when you looked at how his parole hearing went, when they asked him about the crime, why did you do it? And he said, I don't know. I was young and wild. And it's like, that's your answer? You were young and wild? I, he even claims that he was completely sober. And if you believe that, it makes it that much worse. You have the ability to go into a room after you get your score and put a bullet in the back of their head for no reason at all. What you could have put a mask on if you wanted to. And even then, it's now what's remarkable, I think, also about this case is that they like we know they could have gotten away with it. They put these pictures on the TV, and his mother saw it, and his mother called the police and turned him in. You hear that, and you even think, So let's go through some of this information. Here it is. So clutching a bag containing nearly $11,000, and that is a big score. Preston flees the scene of a bank robbery that took the life of bank teller Beverly Chaffee. Following closely, the gun clearly visible in Jerry Francis, who is seeking parole under the old timers law for inmates who have served 20 years and reached the age of 45. I thought it was the age of 40. This is the Act 122 that we hear so much about. Francis, who was 17 at the time, has been in prison for 38 years. From the evidence at hand, the two robbers had a simple MO. They would case the place, maybe come and go several times, but not pull out the chrome-plated 38 special until there was only one employee present. Then they would make the employee lay down and shoot him or her in the head. And simply to do that, and you're sober on top of it, you're evil. I don't think there's any other way to say except that you are evil. And he only showed his continuance of evil with his appeals, with his court, with his like Mr. Renata said, he was trying to litigate his way out of prison. There's no empathy in this man. What has he shown that he should be free? In my opinion, nothing. He's evil. On May 26, 1976, the victim was Beverly, 46 years old, a loan teller at the St. Martin Bank. She died from one gunshot wound, but not for some 16 months, during which she remained incapacitated. A bank official said the pair got away with $10,917. And Jerry Paul Francis, 17, and Preston George, 24, both from New Iberia, were arrested by the FBI in Houston after Francis's mother recognized her son in the photos taken by the bank security camera and called police. Francis were initially charged with armed robbery, attempted murder, and federal charge of bank robbery. For reasons now lost to record, they were tried on the armed robbery charge only. In Franklin, on a change of venue. And I'm happy they brought this up, because what the victim said was that the sheriff stated that they would only get 8 years if charged for murder. And I did some Googling. I tried to find legislation so I could talk about that, but I couldn't find it. I didn't ask ChatGPT. I suppose I can do that. Hang on. Yeah, ChatGPT cannot pull it up. So there's, I have a hard time. Well, okay, let's put it this way: we've seen enough of the sentencing issues in Louisiana that we probably shouldn't be surprised by anything. We probably shouldn't be surprised that a law could exist that you can get less time for killing someone and more time for robbing. I mean, we've seen insane sentencing. We know that you can get a life sentence for having possession of Schedule 1. If you've been caught with it 3 times in a decade, you'll get a life sentence. And meanwhile, you can harm a child and get probation. So we know that in sentencing makes no sense, but still I have a hard time believing that was accurate information. One of the, what we did read is, at least for the woman's life that he took, because it took her 16 months to die, they couldn't by law charge them for murder. That was the legislation. I read that in Richard's notes. So that was why at least one of the charges I know they couldn't bring on them, which is ridiculous, of course. And I'm sure that law has been changed. There was at some point convicted in the May 10th, 1976 robbery hardware. Okay. So both men are appealing convictions of this case. Particularly is well known for the clerk in both Crowley and Franklin for over 30 years of nearly weekly letters seeking redress in his case. At the time of their sentencing and for years afterwards, 99 years was a life sentence, even after Louisiana legislators established the old-timers law, easing the way to parole for prisoners who had served 20 years and reached the age of 45. Armed robbers remain specifically ineligible, but litigation hacked away at that until a recent case restored parole rights to all prisoners convicted of armed robbery and seeking eligibility under the state old-timers law. On Thursday, March 13th, Jerry Paul Francis, now age 55 or 56, having served some 38 years in armed robbery for the St. Martin Bank and Trust, will come before the state parole board to seek release from prison. So we've actually seen this in Act 122, where it shows that legislation is struck. That's interesting to read it here now. You see, this is Act 122, and I've always seen this, but didn't know when it was dated. So here it's struck. No person shall be eligible for parole consideration who has been convicted of armed robbery and denied parole eligibility. So they struck it, and now you are allowed parole eligibility for armed robbery. So there it is. We're learning a lot from this case. And let's go back here. Chester Cedars Assistant District Attorney for St. Martin Parish said he will go to Baton Rouge and fight Francis' release tooth and nail. And we have seen the DA do that, and I give you credit, sir, a lot of credit. He said back in 1976, Francis couldn't be charged in the case because Louisiana at the time adhered to the old common law standard that a death proceeding 1 year and a day after an event that caused it could not be deemed murder. And can you imagine how that law, what a vague, dumb law, a blanket law. If the woman is shot and on life support for a year and then dies, it's obviously the cause. And the idea that a judge couldn't have some flexibility around that is ridiculous. Who writes these laws, Even though murder is clearly, it's like, oh, she's on life support, but it's just whatever. Okay. Even though murder is clearly, and look at what the effect it had, this dumb law. Someone writes this, legislation passes it, and then look at the effect it has all these years later. Okay, hold on. Even though murder is clearly what it was, Louisiana, like a lot of other jurisdictions, has since abandoned that practice. The death of the hard work of Clerk Rain, Curtis Johnson, might further taint Francis' efforts to go free. The record of trial in Franklin is not clear on who pulled the trigger and eventually killed Beverly. But in the security photos, both men are variously seen with a gun in hand. And here's something interesting. It took the juror just 8 minutes to convict them. Preston in New Iberia was convicted of armed robbery Wednesday in connection with the May 10th, 1976 holdup. Earlier, co-defendant Jerry Paul Francis, also in New Iberia, was convicted of armed robbery in the same incident. Both men have been sentenced to 99 years of prison term without benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. Little did everyone know. 26 and Francis were convicted 2 years ago of armed robbery at the branch. They received 99-year sentences without benefit of probation and parole or suspension. That in that incident, which occurred on May 25th, 1976. In both armed robbery shootings, deaths were involved Rain hardware store manager Curtis Johnson, 73, and bank teller Beverly of St. Martinville, gunshot wounds to the head. Mrs. Schaaf's 46, who was paralyzed by the gunshot, died, and 16 months later after the incident. Oh, I didn't even pick up on this. There were 3. He killed 3 people. Arcadia Parish officials said the jury deliberated for 5 minutes in the Francis case in 8 minutes. You can't do that. You can't go and kill 3 people in a completely violent, brutal, unnecessary. And then he also had a horrible prison record with all those write-ups. And we've seen a lot of cases. Like the number that he had was a lot. And then he kind of like lied to Mr. O'Shea and said, I've just started to change. I took programs and started to change. And Mr. O'Shea called him out. He's like, well, was it because you now had a chance at parole? And then he even tried to lie. It's like, no, I didn't have a chance. You have a good time date. No, isn't your good time date in 2029? Yes. It's like, you're doing this at your parole hearing. That was my takeaway from it, is that his write-up stopped the second he realized that he had a chance because of he was 17 years old when this happened, which the victims pointed very clearly out. He's not a child, and it's absolutely ridiculous that he could be considered one. There's a lot of other documents that Richard provided, which are his appeals. His appeals to sue he was suing the parole board. He was, there's everything that they spoke about. And I'll put those links in the description if you want to go over it, but I won't go over that now. Again, my bottom line takeaway is that this man did not give me the impression at all that he's changed at all. I think he's evil, because you just hear the pain of the family and what they're going through even now. Like, he is still putting them through pain now, not just by applying for parole, but by actually suing them. Frivolous lawsuits saying you can't come and testify. And he doesn't even see the irony in it, because you were a juvenile. Sir, you get a chance at freedom because you were a juvenile, and then you're going to prohibit the child who you essentially orphaned on the grounds that he was a juvenile when it happened? How sick are you? And he sits there with this, and you have to listen to everyone talk about how great he is, and they all sound pathetic. They really do. I've never enjoyed listening to Norris and then his student attorney. And we're not going to, she's a student attorney. She's doing her best. But it's just the parole project, and yeah. And he's going to get out on his good time date, if you can imagine that. Now, he is getting up there in age, and he's 65, and I guess he needs another 6 years, so he'll be 71, but he probably is going to apply for parole again before his good time date. This hearing took place in 2021, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in a year. But there you have it. That's just my opinion. Thank you, Richard, for the information. And with that, I'll let you go.